Touchdown pass, Matt Corral to Dontario Drummond from 2 yards out. 14 plays, 94 yards, and 405 to make it 10-0. Caden Costa kicked a 32-yard field goal after a 9-play, 75-yard drive to make it 13-0. And the Rebels got a safety with 4 minutes left in the second quarter. 15-0 was the halftime score. But, guys, if we're being honest, everybody that was cheering for Ole Miss, and even those people that were just watching the game, absolutely walked out of that first half going, man, they left some points on the field. At bare minimum, it should have been 22-0. Probably 25 and maybe 29-0 at the half. But the Rebels couldn't stick it in from inside the yard one line, first and goal. The 1 yard line, when they had it first and goal after a Texas A&M penalty that made it half the distance to the goal. And Matt Corral had a fumble that pushed them back, and they tried a fake field goal, and that didn't work. Just a lot of missed opportunities in the first half, and frankly, there were a lot of people, my text messages including, who thought that was going to come back and bite Ole Miss in the second half. And it got to a point where you thought, maybe it is going to. Texas A&M came out, drove it down, kicked a field goal to make it 15-3. And then on their next drive, they had a 24-yard touchdown run, got the running game going a little bit with A-Chain taking it in from 24 yards out to make it 15-10. And then they kicked another field goal early in the fourth quarter to make it 15-13. And folks were like, uh-oh. And then you got back-to-back massive plays by Ashanti Sistrunk. He batted a ball into the air on first down, and then on second down, dropped back into coverage and just kind of ripped it away. Ball tipped into the air. He grabs it, gets possession. They end up tied up on the ground. Ole Miss gets the interception. 2 plays later, Snoop Connor goes into the end zone to make it 22-13. And then on the next drive, Zach Calzada tries to throw a deep ball. It's intercepted by A.J. Finley. He takes it 52 yards to the house. And everybody was able to exhale. Stop the presses. It was Ole Miss's defense that won that game on Saturday night in Oxford.
As we said earlier, new audience and whatnot, they were physically dominant. They controlled the line of scrimmage. The 3-man front with just 2 linebackers controlled the line of scrimmage and the point of attack for the vast majority of the game, save a couple of drives where A-Chain was able to break a couple of long runs. Otherwise, non-effective. I mean, what we thought going into the season was the best running back in the SEC had 41 yards on 15 carries in that game. That from an Ole Miss defense is shocking. You mentioned the fake punt, choosing to go for it in the red zone, stuff like that. I am curious.
Fake field goal.
The fake field goal, excuse me. And not taking
the punter
points.
Carrying it.
Right. They were, 4 of 6 in the red zone, just 2 touchdowns. Not a good day play calling and executing inside the red zone. But there were a couple of times where debating this feels a little silly now because they are who they're going to be under Lane Kiffin. They're going to go for it on 4th down. They're just going to. They're going to do it. Scream about it at the top of your lungs. It doesn't matter. They're going to do it. However, in a game like that, where your defense is playing as well as they are, doesn't that creep into your mind a little bit? I know it's your identity and it's what you do, and you could have really put them away if you did execute, but when you're not giving up a lot of points, 3 is more valuable than 3 usually is. You didn't in this game have to maximize your scoring probability on every possession because your opponent was not maximizing theirs on every possession. I was thinking about that watching the game as, this isn't Arkansas. Arkansas was scoring on you at will. You had to go for it on 4th down there. You had to go for it on 4th down in Tuscaloosa because 3 wasn't winning you that game. You had to maximize every drive. But in this one, A&M wasn't scoring on you. You were owning them. So take the points. And if you take the points, it never gets dicey at any point if you do that then because of how good your defense is playing. Instead, you were bad in the red zone, didn't take points when offered to you, and there was a point in that game where you felt like they were about to lose it.
Yeah. I mean, I think you answered your question with where it started. But, And by answering your question with where it started, I mean, they're going to go for it on fourth down. Lane Kiffin and the Ole Miss staff believe in analytics. They trust that process, and they use it. But I would argue that play calling in the second half leads you to believe that Lane Kiffin, along with DJ Durkin and Chris Partridge, really believe that their defense could continue to play at a pretty high level because they called a conservative second half in that game. They did not push the ball down into the middle of the field. They didn't take a bunch of shots. They took one shot that I remember in the second half. It was on kind of a wheel route to Braylon Sanders. He tried to dive for it, kind of come underneath the corner to make the catch and wasn't able to haul it in. Texas A&M's corners were good. They were getting some pressure. I think, I don't know this, but Borky, I think, and you guys tell me if you think I'm crazy on this, I think the Ole Miss staff believed that Texas A&M's defensive line was getting more pressure, and if they ran routes that were longer developing routes across the middle of the field, that the mobility limitations that Matt Corral had were going to potentially lead to plays that they didn't want to deal with, whether it was sacks or pressures or fumbles. Corral put it on the ground a couple of times. And here's the other thing. I asked Lane Kiffin about it after the game. And he said, look, Matt didn't have his best day throwing the football. And I think most would agree with that. But part of the reason they think that is the case, he basically hasn't practiced for the last 3 weeks. He's been extremely limited in practice time because they've just been trying to get him well enough to get to game day. And I think that has some to do with maybe a little bit of timing being off, especially on downfield throws. So, make of that what you will. But I hear what you're saying, Borky.
It's also nitpicking, too. They beat the number 11 team in the country who had won 4 straight, including a win over Alabama, by 10 points at home.
There were people that were complaining about the offense and points left on the field after the game. If you're an Ole Miss fan and you were complaining after that, you should probably just go find something else to do with your time. Because there's not anything that can ever make you happy. It's just not.
There is concern, and it's fair to be concerned about second half offense. Now, the Liberty game was a lot of they were protecting their quarterback. Just don't go get hurt, Matt, and let's go play next week. But second half against Auburn, couldn't move the football. Really banged up, no wide receivers, but still couldn't score. Second half of Liberty, didn't score. Second half here, really struggled. After putting up 400 yards of offense in the first half, he only had 100 in the second. Something's up there, and they've got to fix it. And luckily, they get a preseason game this weekend to get ready for the